got two phenomenal guests with me today. Daniel Gonzalez, President and CEO of Gonzalez Public Affairs and Consulting. Thanks for joining us, Daniel.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And of course, the ever so popular Ken Nolan, the chief appraiser at the Dallas Central Appraisal District. How are you doing tonight, Ken?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Good. Well, these two guys are joining us tonight because we are going to be talking about tax assessments and how your taxes are assessed, the tax rates, basically taxing for dummies. So we've got two guests who know a lot about the subject, and let's just rip the Band-Aid off, Ken, and
Okay.
give ourselves a little bit of information of what you do, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
All right. Just for some background, we've been around since 1981. The legislature in 1979 created appraisal districts. And the reason they did that was there was a lot of school finance litigation, and not if you've heard that before. And also to make the system more transparent and more professional. Before the advent of appraisal districts, you had cities, schools, counties, all valuing your property, all sending you a notice, all purporting to be at 100% of market value. And guess what? The value was different on all three of those notices.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have to call the city, you'd have to call the county, you'd have to call the school district. So the legislature said enough's enough, and they created us. And we have two main functions. Our main function, obviously, is we're the Dallas Central, wait for it, appraisal district. That's what we do. We're responsible for appraising property, about 840,000 accounts in Dallas County, for property tax purposes at 100% of market value. The other big thing we do, and a lot of people have probably dealt with this on this, is we grant exemptions: homestead, senior citizens, disabled veterans, disabled persons, religious exemptions, charitable exemptions, all the things that are listed in the law in the state of Texas. We're in the mass appraisal business. And if you were to go to an appraisal, or if you were to go to the USPAP guide, you would see some sections that govern what we do. All of you are familiar with the appraiser who comes to your house. If you're going to sell your house, or your house you're going to be refinancing, or you're going to be doing for insurance purposes, guy comes to your house. He probably spends a couple hours there, takes a lot of pictures, walks around the inside, walks around the outside. That's appraisal. That's what we do too. But we do it on a mass basis, 840,000 accounts. And obviously what we use is a computer assisted mass appraisal system. It's the only way we can get done what we need to do. If we did what a fee appraiser, as we refer to them, did, you couldn't afford our budget and we'd never finish. It'd probably be 10 years to do that for every property in Dallas County.
Sure.
Texas, the principles in Texas are that taxation must be equal and uniform. In other words, I can't treat you different than your neighbors who have similar homes. I can't say, hey, Joe's my buddy and he's a great guy, and I'm only going to tax him at 50% of market value, and the rest of you, I'm going to put it at 100%. That's not legal in the state of Texas. Property must be at full market value. In other words, if you looked at the typical textbook definition, which is also in the law of market value, a willing buyer, a willing seller, no, neither one of them under duress, looking to maximize their gains. It's the same definition that you would use to determine if you were doing a market analysis on a house. We're doing the same thing. Property may not be valued above its market value. Now, I will tell you, 178,000 of my closest friends came to see me last summer because obviously they think we put their house above market value.
Well, congratulations. It sounds like you were really popular.
I'm probably the most popular guy in the summer. And every summer from April to about July, I am just the most popular guy in the county. All property gets one appraisal. Like I said, it used to be like in the old days, the city of Dallas can't suddenly decide, hey, we don't like that appraisal district and we're going to hire our own appraisers and we're going to do our own values. It's not legal in the state of Texas. If you're going to be taxed, you have to do business with us, and there's only one value in your home. And then if you have a problem and you want to dispute your value, you go before the appraisal review board, and there's only one of those in each county. So that's pretty much a general overview of what we do.
Awesome. Okay. We already have a question, and it's one that I knew we were going to get pretty quickly. But Johnny Moed said, where and how are the sold prices gathered by the appraisal districts in regards to establishing value and going a step further, appeals by homeowners? So can you give us a little
Sure.
context there?
Sure. We have various sources. We get a lot of information from homeowners themselves. They come in with a closing statement and they give it to us as evidence. We have relationships with realtors, registered appraisers, professional appraisers, commercial brokers, leasing agents. There are on more complex property like commercial property. There are services that you can subscribe to, like CoStar, for example,
Sure.
that tells you about a property that is sold and what typical lease rates are and typical expenses, things like that. So it's every source we can get our hands on.
Okay. So follow-up question from Johnny, is any sold information pulled from the MLS by the district and or any consulting realtors with access to the MLS agents in Dallas, which I think you kind of just answered, Ken, that you guys do have relationships.
We have relationships with certain realtors and we get information. The one thing I want to get across is we don't deal with asking prices. It's confirmed sales that have actually happened. To determine market value, one, there has to be a market, and secondly, there has to be transactions that have actually closed. This often comes up on high-end property where you might see a house in Highland Park for sale for $20 million, and you look at it, the appraisal district's only got it valued at 10. Like, well, they must not be doing their job. And then 2 months later, it ends up selling for $8 million.
Sure.
Some people have a high opinion of their property, so that's why you have to work with what actually happens.
You know, I can't believe you just said that, Ken, because I never experienced that when I'm doing my initial walkthroughs with sellers. But, you know, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, kind of honing in on why both of you are here. You are here to establish the market value of the properties, but you kind of get a bad rap sometimes because you're not the one setting the actual tax rates, which is the other part of this scenario. So, Daniel, why don't you enlighten us a little bit on that part of the process?
No, absolutely, Ashley, and that's a great kind of segue too, because as Ken mentioned, they have their work cut out for them. You know, I think Ken said they have what'd you say, 870,000 parcels,
840,000, and I have 242 employees.
I mean, that's just incredible of how many parcels are there just in Dallas County, and again, as he mentioned, you know, it's a mass appraisal model system. So, you know, they try to get as close as possible to 100% of value. But I think what a lot of people, the disconnect, if you will, is, as Ken mentioned, 178,000 of his closest friends protested their property value in 2020. But more than likely, less than 5 of those people showed up at their local taxing jurisdiction with the city, the county, the school district, MUD, whatever it may be. Those are the ones who are actually setting the tax rate. So in theory, your value can go up by 30%. And in fact, that's probably good, because I have yet to find a realtor who has a client who has told their realtor, find me a piece of property that's going to go down and depreciate over the next 5 years. You want it to go up, but people don't like the fact that the tax rates aren't adjusted accordingly. So there's no new revenue that comes in from year after year. And that's really what the legislature has. One of the things that they did last session in 2019 was they passed a bill to give property owners more information so they can have that information before they go before their city council or a county commissioner's court or school board, so they can talk about what the overall tax revenue that the tax jurisdiction will realize with those new values.
Yeah, and I think the legislature has actually caught on the last couple of sessions. Senator Betancourt, who is somewhat of a property tax expert and has passed the legislation that Daniel mentioned, you know, has told people it's not your appraisal that determines how much value you pay in, how much taxes you pay in. It's your city council, it's your school board, it's your commissioner's court. And you know, I said, if 1/10 of the amount of people came and visited my office went down to commissioner's court or went down to city council or the school board, I guarantee you they'd start probably listening a whole lot more closely when people start asking, well, why do you need $60 million for street repairs? Why do you need all these new police cars? So on and so on.
And that's, I think, the crux of it is, you know, we kind of talked about this before. they want to come and visit you once a year and say hello and reacclimate your relationship. But it's also because they can walk out the door and calculate what their savings were because it's instant gratification. But they're going about it the wrong way.
Yeah, I tell this story every year. A guy caught me in the lobby one year, and it was around the pro deadline. We were very busy, and he only had to wait about 30 minutes without an appointment. Went upstairs. He comes back and he grabs me. I was like, "Oh my God, what did we do?" He goes, "I just want to tell you how easy this was. In fact, it's so easy. I'm going to do it every year, and I'm going to tell all my neighbors how easy it is."
Well, and that's not to say don't do it, because it's a mass appraisal system.
Right.
And that's where us as realtors do provide value to our clients and our neighbors, because it's not perfect, but there's no perfect system to sit there and assess value of 840,000 parcels, like you said. So that's why the appeals process is there for people to do such as that. So this is not about deterring people from doing it. No. But the main issue at hand is, we have to start holding our local elected officials and bodies accountable to have more transparency as what those tax rates are doing to us.
And Ashley, I was just going to say, Ashley, real quickly, how many times have you heard one of your local elected officials say on the campaign trail, "Reelect me," because for the past 8 years or 5 years, I've lowered the tax rate every single year that I've been on the city council or whatever it is. And while that may be technically true, when you compare it to last year's tax rate, that really isn't the right comparison. The comparison is what is called the effective tax rate, which is now called the no new revenue tax rate. And that's based on the new values and the amount of revenue that was generated last year in the current year. So as these new values come up from Ken and his 200 plus employees, that tax rate is supposed to be adjusted accordingly. So there's a no new revenue tax rate, which brings in the same amount of revenue from last year based on the higher property values. And then from there, there's a new proposed tax rate. And that proposed tax rate really is the true comparison that you should be making between what they did last year versus the proposed rate.
If the tax rate stays the same, the one they want, and we've raised their values overall 5 to 10%, they're collecting 5 to 10% more in revenue.
That's right.
Are you telling me that people are tiny bit manipulating their words a little bit? I know that doesn't happen in politics, and ultimately that's what we're here about. And there's a great website too that is now in place. Isn't that correct, as far as understanding this process in more detail? And that is knowyourtaxes.org. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. That's the website, that we've created to give more transparency about property taxes. And it's all based, again, on what the legislature did back, last session with Senate Bill 2. And Kenny kind of mentioned it as well, that the legislature really has kind of caught on what was happening at the local level, where whether you want to call it, people were being manipulated or not, but certainly people were not being given the true tax rates and how to compare those tax rates. And a lot of people, and I'll say it here tonight, that a lot of local elected officials point their fingers to the appraisal district, because they'll say, "Look, I lowered the tax rate from last year. It was the appraisal district who raised your value. Go talk to them about it." Well, that's
why Ken has so thick skin at this point, and luckily he is from Boston, so he can weather the storm. But you're absolutely right, Daniel. And that's, I think having this website is just the first step. But obviously that our work has just started in that regard. And so we've got a great question from Wendy Johnson, who said, "What about properties that close and they're not on the MLS? When protesting, do you take those into consideration, those of which are not reported?"
Yeah, and they may not be reported, but keep in mind, we're the keepers of ownership.
Sure.
I have deed records. So I always give this example. A taxpayer walks in and says, "Hey, I want to talk about my value. I think it's too high." Well, I note here that 2 months ago, there was a deed change in your property. So let's talk about what happened there, and possibly you could show me the closing statement. Then we'll determine whether your value is too high or too low.
Well, that goes into another follow-up question from Johnny. As you know, Texas is a non-disclosure state. What is the appraisal district's position on keeping Texas as a non-disclosure state? And a follow-up to that, what do you see as the ideal cooperating partnership?
Daniel knows this about me. We spent years getting beat about the ears by the legislature about sales disclosure. I'm not going to advocate it. Most states have it. I get somewhat irritated at some of my peers in Texas that says I cannot do my job without having sales disclosure when somehow I've figured out how to do my job without it. I tell people we eventually get every sale. As I said, we know when property's transferred. The biggest problem is we get it a year late, let's say. By the time someone comes in with a notice and we ask them about a deed and they show us a closing statement, whatever the case may be, and this is more so commercial property than homes, it's too late for me to do anything about it this year. So in effect, that person's getting a discount until the next appraisal year. But again, that's really not a problem with homeowners. It's mostly large commercial properties that we have that issue with. So I'm satisfied with the way the system is. Until everyone can agree on if it should be done and in what method it should be done and how it should be done, I'm just willing to go down the road and do my job.
A big part of this, and I actually read today that, while, our homes are going up in value at a greater rate than a lot of us have experienced over the past couple decades, we're still lower in our overall appreciation value than most areas across the country. And that's even in the last couple of months, statistically. So, we're trending, lower than the rest of the country with a robust economy. And the values are going to continue to go up. That doesn't mean it's still not an amazing real estate market for people to be advocating to be homeowners. And I think this is what I was talking to you guys yesterday when we were meeting each other for the first time. Part of this does go on realtors because our job is not just to open a door anymore. I mean, gosh, we have self-showing technology in certain homes, and the data obviously is at even the consumer's fingertips. Our job is to advocate beyond the closing table and to instruct along the process. So if the taxes are considerably lower because they haven't been adjusted over years, because ownership hasn't changed hands, you don't know that there's been improvements done to the property, that's a discount for them probably going into the next year on the taxes. But it's my job to say, hey, just so you know, you're going to deal on the taxes right now, but expect those to catch up over time. So as long as you know, and that there's not going to be sticker shock, I think some of it is teeing our buyers up for success over time. And I think that's what a lot of people have dealt with, is that overall sticker shock when it does catch up. And I do think as the realtor public, we need to do a better job of setting those proper expectations. Johnny gave you an applause, Ken. Well said. Thank you so much. And that's huge coming from Johnny. He's a tough critic. So, okay, back to Wendy, though. How are appraisal review boards appointed?
They are appointed by the county district administrative judge. Back in the day, they used to be appointed by our board of directors, and we didn't like that any more than the legislature liked it. We always thought it didn't smell right. It didn't pass the smell test. Well, you guys are appointing these guys, so they really work for you and they're on your side, and they're not. They're citizens. So finally, a couple of sessions ago, maybe 2 or 3, the legislature said in large counties, at least, and it's optional in small counties, the county district administrative judge who appoints these people. So we have 100 and I think we're sitting at 104 right now. They appoint them. We run the applications. Because there's certain qualifications. Obviously, you have to be a citizen of the county for so many years. You can't be an employee of a taxing unit. So we take the applications, we vet them for legality. You've met the qualifications, but we send them to the judge and say, here's people who qualify the job. You pick and send them back to us, and they do their job. The more transparency. Now, I will say this: we still have to pay them. Unfortunately, we've been advocating for years that someone else pay them. So every
Yeah.
year in our budget, I have to put money in there to pay these people. And I've had taxpayers ask me, well, sure they work for you. Who pays them? Well, I pay them. Well, they must work for you then. And that's not the case. We'd either like the state to, the good thing would be if the comptroller, we sent time to the comptroller and they sent us, and they sent us a bill back and told to pay these people instead of us doing it. That would create even a bigger gap between the two entities.
And actually, I would even add to that as well that, Texas Realtors, we advocated for that bill to pass. And again, I think maybe it was in 2015.
Yeah.
I think maybe when we got that law passed, but
Yeah.
Ken is exactly right. It really didn't pass the smell test, and we wanted to make sure that not property owners and everybody needs to understand that there is a separation between the appraisal district professional staff and the appraisal review board members. Yes, it's still unfortunate that they do get a paycheck, from the appraisal district. So some people could say, or they point to that fact and say, see, you're paying them, just as Kid said, they must work for you, but they don't. And it's an independent body. And one of the reasons why the realtors advocated and supported and pushed this bill through was to just really try to create that separation between the appraisal district staff as well as the ARB members.
About 5 to 7 years ago, we went to the trouble of we have a separate bank account that says Dallas County Appraisal Review Board. That's what they get paid out of, to try to create as much separation as possible.
That's right.
It's what it is and what it should be looked at. It's jury duty on steroids, really.
Right.
I mean, you're going to spend, if you volunteer for this, you're going to spend probably from May to July, 8 hours a day with us, 5 and lots of times 6 days a week, so we can get finished. Well, our date to be finished is July 25th.
Right.
Consequently, you get a lot of retired people. I'm getting older, so I can't. I used to tell the joke that our ARB was God's waiting room. But I'm getting older, and I can't say that anymore. So, but it's mostly retired people or people. There are some people that are well off enough who want to do public service, and I tell the ARB every year when I first see them, and in fact that happened today, the new members, it's a very important public service. We can't get our job done without you doing what you're supposed to do. I will say this, so everybody will know. I told the ARB, I said, if I don't speak to you a whole lot, I'm not being standoffish. I'm not allowed to speak to you by law.
Yeah.
It's a misdemeanor if I were to have quote unquote ex parte communication with an ARB member. So I always tell them I'm not a snob, but I don't really want to get to know you, and I really don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Learning all of this is huge, because I knew a lot, but you're enlightening me as well. And I think it's great to see that there's that arm's length kind of separation, and what protocols are in place. And I think that's fantastic. And in fact, you're getting accolades, which I wasn't expecting. I thought you were going to have to put on some Kevlar or something. Wendy even said, you answered my next question, is how they were paid. Thank you so much, Ken. So I think that means you're doing a great job, creating that transparency today.
Thank you. Unfortunately, there's horror stories around this state, especially in smaller counties, where taxpayers come in and, they look at, they give their case to the ARB, and the ARB looks at the chief appraiser and he gives it this or this. And it shouldn't go on. And unfortunately, those are the stories the legislature hears every other year. And I don't know what the solution is in smaller, especially smaller counties where that goes on.
Well, and you're right too. Real quickly, Ashley, is having dealt with property taxes, this issue for, a long time, nearly 2 decades, if not more than that. I have seen, I have visited many appraisal districts. Have visited with many of our members all across the state. And I'm not gonna say this just because Ken is on with us tonight, but Ken really truly does run one of the best appraisal districts in Texas. And if we could clone Ken Nolan and put him across Texas, we wouldn't have a lot of the issues that we have currently. But unfortunately, not everyone is like Ken, and doesn't do their business like Ken does, and his employees there, the appraisal district, and there are horror stories. Hopefully, we can get some changes, in some of those districts. But I think again, the legislature they do see a lot of those, or they do hear a lot of those horror stories. But again, you have to remember from a legislative standpoint, if they're going to pass a bill, it's going to have a statewide implication.
Right.
Yeah.
So whatever they want to do, if they try to do something and change the process based solely on these bad horror stories, and they don't take into account what Ken does on his professional level with his staff, it could really hurt what Dallas does in the Central Appraisal District. So the legislature has to balance that, the horror stories with the good stuff, as well. But I truly do appreciate, Ken and what they do.
Thank
and
you.
I know it's a hard job, but I just wish we had other chief appraisers like Ken across the state.
Well, Ken, gosh, he just said, "Can we clone you? You're one of the best."
I'll have to go back to Boston and see if there's any more of me.
No, that's what I was gonna say. So, I mean, but let's keep this going. And I know you are only for Dallas County. However, we do have somebody where you could maybe give a little context. Hold on one second. We're not going to jump to Johnny, but Jamisa said, "I have a quick question. I live in Tarrant County, but I am taxed for Denton County as well on my property taxes because of Northwest ISD resides in both counties. Is there any way to appeal this?"
Okay, if you physically live in Tarrant County, you're only being appraised by Tarrant Appraisal District. That didn't used to always be the way. When we started, taxing jurisdictions that overlapped into more than one county could choose to use one appraisal district or the other. Consequently, up until 2008, we were in 6 different counties: City of Dallas, City of Carrollton, City of Grand Prairie. Finally, the legislature said, look, enough's enough. People don't understand, why are they getting 2 appraisal notices? You're only supposed to have one value. So they cut us off at the county line. So you may be living in Northwest ISD, which is in Tarrant and Denton County, but if you're physically within Tarrant County, only the Tarrant Appraisal District is the one appraising your property.
So hopefully that answered your question. And if you have a follow-up, please put it in the chat. We've got Johnny following up. In the event a homeowner elects to protest their taxes, what is the best and most efficient way for a homeowner to thoroughly present their case and keep it factual, not emotional?
The best thing, okay, and I'm going to give you my pre-COVID remarks, then I'm going to give you my COVID remarks, because things have changed drastically.
Okay.
Before COVID hit, we would encourage people to come in, sit down with an appraiser, whether you'd file. There's a 30-day window before you have to file between notices and protest time. So if you came in before the protest deadline and you were able to work it out, we were done. You didn't have to file a protest. The majority of people wait, just like they wait to file their income tax, just like they wait to get their car inspected, whatever. So the majority of the people we dealt with informally had filed a protest. But we would always tell them, look, have you talked to an appraiser? And if you haven't, please come in or call or something and talk to an appraiser before you go to that hearing, because it might be something simple we can work out. We've had people that showed up at a hearing with a closing statement and we're like, if you'd have called us, we wouldn't have had to have the hearing and we could have done this a long time ago. That's the way it worked pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. Our building's been locked since March, and it will continue to be locked to the public probably through this next summer too. But we have a very robust online protest system called UFile, where you can attach documents to us. It's as if you were sitting across the desk from an appraiser, handing him documents. You're emailing them to him, and he's going to review the documents, and he's going to come back to you, say, here's the offer we can make, or you've been scheduled for a hearing. Telephone calls are fine. We're not going to do any formals this time unless you've already filed a protest. We figured out last year when the doors were locked, it was much simpler to wait to people. If you file a protest, then we'll be glad to talk to you. It cut down on it cut down on the staff time, and it just went a whole lot smoother. Of the 178,000 protests we had, we ended up having, I don't know, slightly over 100,000 hearings. The rest of those were all worked out informally, either through our e-file system on our website or by telephone calls and people mailing us stuff, emailing us stuff, whatever the case may be. As I mentioned earlier, there's two reasons we have the doors locked. One, to protect the staff. Since we came back from New Year's, we're going on averaging about 5 cases a week now. We had done really well. We're probably getting up around we're probably getting close to 15% of the staff now that's had COVID since it started back in March. The other thing, frankly, is to protect the ARB. The Attorney General came out with an opinion last year. It says, if you absolutely demand an in-person hearing, I can't deny it to you. I have to give it to you. I was very pleasantly surprised by the public's cooperation with us last year. Of those 178,000 protests, less than 1,000 people actually demanded to come down there and have a hearing. The rest of them did it over the phone, and they were perfectly happy. Now, we would ask at the beginning of each hearing, we would ask the taxpayer, you understand you're in front of a one-member panel, and you understand and you agree that you will have your hearing by telephone. And if they said yes, then we just moved on. If they said no, we said, okay, we will reschedule your hearing, but keep in mind, we're going to hold all these in-person hearings to the very end of the cycle before we start letting people in. So it went very well. And I think that's going to be, we want people, the reason we want people to file a protest is they get a PIN number on our system, and they can look at information from our files to see, well, do I really need to file a protest? What else did DCAT do in my neighborhood? Oh, geez, they raised everybody else like mine, and Joe across the street, his house is valued the same as mine. So maybe, I don't need to file a protest. I always tell people, first of all, on residential property, you really don't need to hire a tax consultant. Getting with a realtor is great. We love to have people come in with a market analysis, as information, something we can talk about while we're there. Well, here's the sales my realtor gave us. Okay, we've got 3 of those. We don't have the other 2 or 3 that you gave us. That's great. Well, now we'll look at all of them. But I tell people, no one knows if their house has a problem. For example, I have a cracked slab. I need a new roof. I live in East Dallas, and all these houses you've got for sales are remodeled. Mine's 1964 vintage on the inside. Here's pictures of my green shag carpeting, by the way. No one.
That's coming back in style potentially. Just FYI. So
maybe a bad example, but no one knows your house better than you, and we're glad to sit down and talk to you. I have preached to the staff the whole time I've been there. It's not our value; it's the right value we're looking for.
And that's huge, Ken. And to further up on Johnny's question there, that's why working with a realtor is so important. Find your trusted realtor partner, and we will walk alongside you. And not only with the comparative market analysis, be able to build, hey, I know you were getting estimates on that flooring, and that was cost over $20,000. We need to build that in to our case, and let's do it, like Johnny said, in a non-emotional way and presenting the facts. So let's take the photos and do different things like that.
Yeah, don't cut. The worst thing you can do is, one, come in and be an ass, if I may say that.
No,
it's not going to get you very far with anybody. But the second thing is, if you come in, and we've had people do this, they're like, I don't necessarily disagree with the value, but my taxes are too high. And I'd go back to what Daniel said. I appreciate your predicament, but you need to go talk to your city councilman, your school board member, find out why they need all that money.
Well, and Ashley too, and Ken, that just as a reminder, to Johnny and others, that when you file a protest with the appraisal district, you're not protesting your taxes. You're protesting the value that's being placed on your property. Truly, if you want to protest your property taxes, you need to be talking to your taxing entity, to the city council, to your county commissioner, to the county commissioners, to your school board, because again, they're the ones who are setting that tax rate. Ken and his staff are only putting a value on that property. Then it's the taxing entity who sets that tax rate. And as a reminder too, because they are using the mass appraisal model system, Ken and his staff, they would love to have pictures because there may be some things on an individual basis that the appraisal district may not know about. And that's really, it's incumbent upon us to show them and tell them, hey, you put my property, at this value, but here are some pictures of some things, deferred maintenance or whatever it may be that you may not be aware of. So that's all very helpful to them, so they can have a more accurate value for your property.
I mean, I had to go speak to a city council. I won't name which city it was in Dallas County, and I was explaining to them just that about, they keep, well, what do you guys do down there? Why do you keep raising values and stuff like that? And I said, I explained to them, well, we don't determine values. Buyers and sellers determine values. We reflect the market. And I talked about the tax rate, and the mayor looked at me and says, well, that would make us out to be the villain. And I said, well, why don't you walk a mile in my shoes sometimes?
Well, and I think that goes back to, what Daniel was saying. Is knowyourtaxes.org a proper resource for people to find out when and where they should be, communicating with their local officials, or where can they find out more information as to when to do that?
There's a tax transparency website that we are responsible for maintaining, even though it has nothing to do with us. We're kind of a service bureau. It is called Dallas County Texas Taxes.gov. Okay. We have to mail right now. We have to mail a postcard to everybody in the county, notifying them of the availability of the website and the URL of the website. And we have to do that by August 7th. After August 7th, the taxing jurisdictions load onto that website their no new taxes rate, their proposed rate, and their voter approval tax rate. They also have to put on there when their public hearing is going to be, notices about the public hearing. And there's also a comment section in there for taxpayers to say, hell no, you've got too much money as it is. Don't raise my taxes. And that goes on like all of August and part of September until they set a tax rate.
Well, again, so we posted it in the chat over here, but it's Dallas County Texas Taxes.gov. That's perfect. Right. So that's in there, and that's huge for all the realtors that are on this right now. That's a website that you should be taking note of. And when you're helping your clients run a comparative market analysis, when they get their assessment, this is also something that you should be giving them to say, okay, we've done part one, but now you need to do the more important part two. And here it is. And again, that's what we should be doing and advocating for on our side. Because I got to tell you, a lot of times I'm doing comparative market analysis and saying, take the deal, okay? Because if I'm putting a sign in your yard today, I'm getting you 40 grand more. So I can't help you on that end. But again, here's the website to fight the tax rates. So I think that's huge. Okay, going back up to Sherry Fearbacher. And by the way, Ken, she's a tough cookie, lived on the East Coast herself. I've been trying to build a complaint in the form of a question for this topic, but the information coming out is actually very informative and quite helpful. This has been great, even if Ken is a Yankee. Don't let her bust you too much. She's actually my mother, Ken, and my business partner. But that's a huge compliment from Sherry.
Thank you. Thank you.
We had been talking about this before coming on, and she's always ready to throw something out there. But you have done a great job just educating all of us even further. Let's go back down and see if we have anything else. Yes, Gary Nordley. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, real quickly, as you're looking for another question, I was just going to mention as well that, the knowyourtaxes.org, you can also go there and there's a pull down. There's on the top right-hand corner, I believe, there is find your local information. And you can click there on that graphic and a pull down menu will show up for all the appraisal districts. So I just really quickly just went to Dallas County and it brought me to that website that Ken talked about. And you can enter in any address that you want. And I just entered, 1200 Main Street. And it's really interesting that on the website, this is the new information that was included in Senate Bill 2 that now you have it at your disposal. So 1200 Main Street in Dallas County for Garland ISD, there's the no new revenue tax rate. There's the proposed rate. there's the amount that would generate based on your value, and then the difference. So their proposed rate would generate an additional $317 that you would pay to Garland ISD. And ultimately, they adopted a rate that was a little bit less than the proposed rate, but it was still higher than the no new revenue tax rate. So that's a lot of information, good information that now property owners will have at their disposal, so they can know exactly what their value is and how their tax bill is going to be calculated based on the proposed rate and the no new revenue rate.
And I think that's huge because, again, I mean, like I said, you get a hard time, Ken, but at the end of the day, you guys are just trying to assess market value. And at the other end, if somebody comes in and is able to justify why that was wrong, it sounds like, you guys are quite amenable on the other side.
We don't want to have a hearing any more than someone else wants to go to a hearing. That's our goal.
Sure.
It's, as I said, it's mass appraisal. If you remember in school, if you got a 90, that meant you got 10% of the questions wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So if I get an A on what I do out of 840,000 properties, that means there's about 84,000 of them out there probably that we probably need to do something with.
Sure.
It's the nature of the business. We're not perfect. We don't claim to be perfect. And again, it's not our value. We're not defending what we did. If you come in with reasonable information, we're going to adjust it.
Yep.
I think that's great. Johnny came back with another question. When building a property and the taxes haven't been established with the improvement, i.e. a home is framed but not drywalled on December 31st, what is your advice for establishing a baseline to manage a buyer's expectations?
What we do is it's a partial completion. And, the house is framed. It's probably 30% complete, whatever. We have guidelines for our appraisers when they go out in the field. If the slab's there and nothing else, I mean, I don't have a manual in front of me. It's maybe 10% complete. If it's framed and the roof's on, 30%. So think of, okay, what is this house going to sell for when it's done? Or maybe you've already, it's being built after a deal's, you've already established the price. Take a percentage for that year and say, okay, this house is going to sell for $500,000. It's only 20% complete. X. That's what your taxes will be based on that year. And you won't. And oh, by the way, you won't get any exemptions because January 1, you won't get a homestead exemption.
Right.
It's possible in Texas to get a senior citizen exemption without having a homestead. That's a small quirk in the law. But what they have to remember is next year, when it comes January and they're living in that house and it's 100% done, somebody needs to talk to the mortgage company and say, hey, my taxes are going from this to this. You need to escrow the right amount.
Well, and that's what we talked about, again, going back to what we can do as realtors. Consumers need to use representation and not just builders representation when they're going into new construction, because unfortunately, this is something that has happened time and time again, where somebody's basically been, bumped out of their home. They can no longer afford it because they get a big tax bill, and nobody set that expectation. There's some great builders out there that will actually have that conversation up front, but most won't. And so it goes back to us setting that expectation. Like Johnny teed up the question, we should be advocating for our clients when they're doing that and preparing them. Hey, again, your lender's not looking at what this could potentially be. It's what it is today. And you need to set money aside so you guys are prepared when the true tax bill does come due.
And based on my personal experience, the last house I had, they assessed it as a vacant lot, which it was in that year. When I closed, I said, you need to escrow this amount in taxes. Oh, no, we don't. That's not the taxes. I'm like, look, I know what I'm telling you here. And they'll argue with you. They don't want to do it. And I was like, I don't want to, like you said, Ashley, I don't want to wake up the next year and find out my tax bill went up 10 times and my house payment went up that much too.
Well, and that goes to a different thing too, is, there are different tax rates even within, Dallas County because of city and different school districts. And again, going back to realtors, that's a part of our job. We need to know the different tax rates throughout the different counties. And those are conversations we need to be having because they do impact people. The taxes are there for a reason. it's our job to create that transparency up front. And then now we have these great resources on the websites as people are going on in their home ownership journey, to continue to be educated and informed and know what they can do to fight, the tax increases. So Wendy did come on. I guess she went on to knowyourtaxes.org and says some counties don't have this info. Counties are required to have new taxpayer websites by the 2021 tax year. This county's central appraisal district does not have its website yet. So do we know what the deadline is for some of those if they're going on there?
It's going to be August. They have to have those postcards in the mail and that website up by August 7th.
Okay. Well, good to know.
And
the larger ones had to do it in 20.
Right. I was going to say that the legislature in Senate Bill 2, I believe, the larger counties were included in the first year, and then the smaller counties in the second year. So for 20, as Ken mentioned, the larger counties had to do it, and then I believe for 21, the smaller districts
everybody else has to do it.
I believe that's correct, right?
And also not just the transparency website. All taxing units have to establish a website. So if you've got, Joe Bob County out in West Texas has got 1,000 people, they're going to have a website.
They're going to have, that's right.
So Johnny, who always has phenomenal questions, by the way, has another one. Should the buyers take timestamp photos during the process of near year end?
Sure, that would certainly help. Yeah. I mean, that'd be great. Actually, that is a great question. Yeah,
I told you, Johnny is full of them.
No, yeah, absolutely. Timestamp them, and then there's no. Well, what did you take this in July? Oh, no, here, December 31st. Okay, we're good.
Because again, going back to, for anybody that's joining us now, this is a mass appraisal system, and so an appraiser's not driving out to your property and doing what you referred to as a fee appraisal, an individual appraisal on the property when you're purchasing one. So there's a margin for error, and that's why the protesting process is in there. And again, going back to, it's not even a two-pronged approach at this point. Obviously, setting taxes is, but it's a three-prong in my opinion, because again, realtors should be setting proper expectations for people before, along, and after the process. And I particularly think that we're falling asleep at the wheel doing some of that education. So we could all take a note out of Ken and Daniel's book today, and Johnny for asking all these phenomenal questions and teeing us up, to just be better advocates all the way around. It looks like Marty Mark said, also love working with the liaison, Cheryl Jordan. She is quick and very informative. So is Cheryl one of your team members?
She is, and she is invaluable. I can tell you that. She's our director of community relations. She speaks to lots of homeowner groups, realtor groups. I do too when they invite me, but I think they like Cheryl better.
I don't know, Ken, you've done a pretty good job. I'm growing kind of fond of you after our session today. So we've got a few minutes left, and if anybody else has first, Johnny again, which again, he's got so many great questions, but not always a great response to it. But he said, thank you for all this info. This has been incredibly valuable information for realtor members here in Dallas. And he's absolutely right. And Daniel as well, you guys both just bringing this home full circle for so many of us to be able to continue to advocate for our clients and individual property owners' rights, because that's what we do as realtors, obviously. So we've got a few minutes left. And like I said, if another question pops in, then we'll go ahead and answer that. But I just want to open it up to either one of you. If you've got questions, comments, concerns, anything that we can do as realtors, because this is obviously being put on by MetroTex out to our members and to the consumer public. But, anything that you guys can think that we can do to help you in your efforts.
Well, actually, I would just start with this, that, as you mentioned before, I think at the onset, that, look, realtors are in a great position to help their clients understand this whole process a little bit better. And it really will set you apart from other realtors. Mm-hmm. Look, we have, I think, 140,000 all across the state, and we love every single one of our members, in Texas, but everyone, they are competing against each other. You're competing against, others in MetroTex. But I think it really can set you apart when you can provide information to your clients about something that's very important, your property tax liability and also your appraisal value. So it really can set you apart. And I really encourage all of our members to get better informed of what's happening in your local area, establish relationships, with your local elected officials. And remember, as Ken said, just treat everyone with respect and you'll get respected as well. And a lot of times you'll actually get something for whatever you're asking for. You may not get 100% of it, but you'll get some of it if you just treat people with respect.
That's that word we were kind of talking about yesterday was cooperation. And sometimes realtors aren't always best at that, even though we're called cooperative agents with one another. And this doesn't have to be an adversarial process. This is a cooperative process between the homeowner and the appraisal district and the taxing entities. And we all have to come to a meeting of the minds and find, a win-win solution for everybody. So I appreciate that, Daniel. So Ken, what about you? Any tidbits for us?
I will say this. I will echo what Daniel said. I think in Dallas County, we must have been blessed from the beginning when you hear the horror stories of some of the other counties and what they've experienced in the last 40 years. We've had government entities that support us, that pay our budget. And from the beginning, they said they weren't going to make this political. Just do your job. Ask us how much resources you need and you'll do it. We had, since 1981, we've had an excellent relationship with the realtors. We always have. I talk to my peers and I'm like, why are you fighting with your realtors? I mean, why can't you get along with these people? And we have also found that I'm going to brag on the citizens of Dallas County. Maybe because we've tried to make it easy and non-adversarial, we have I tell people, the smartest tax property owners, I want to call them property owners in Dallas County, who come prepared. You're always going to have that one or two guys every summer that we have to tell the policeman to take them outside and talk them off the ledge. But when we see over 100,000 people and it's less than 10 that we have a problem with, it speaks to the relationship we've tried to establish with the property owning public in Dallas County. It's just we try to be professional. We'd like you to be professional and courteous with us. You'll certainly get the same treatment in return. Again, I don't care how much value I give Dallas County, or like every year are we going to lose value? Are we going to gain value? And I have to give this spiel about, well, here's what I think the market's going to happen. But at the end of the day, if it goes down 10%, it goes down. If it goes up 10%, it goes up 10%. That's, I'm not, as a lot of people think, we're not in cahoots with any taxing unit that says, hey, wink, wink, nod, nod, we have to build an elementary school, so go reappraise our school district. So, again, we've been very lucky, and I want to thank Daniel and Ashley at Metrotex especially. I've done a lot of presentations at Metrotex. I always enjoy it. And again, I've always had pleasant experiences with everybody in your membership for sure.
Well, we appreciate that. And, something that completely has slipped my mind through all of this is what we can also do. And I know you guys send out letters, in regards to homestead exemptions. But as realtors, we need to tell our clients about the exemptions that are afforded to them. And so, this is my plug right now. Everybody should be telling their clients that have been in their home since January 1st of this year that they can actually apply for a homestead exemption, and it's free to apply for the homestead exemption.
Right. Yeah. Please do it online if you can. It makes it much faster and easier for all of us. We will automatically send you a paper copy, all new owners of a homestead exemption. And again, if you feel more comfortable sending it back in the mail, that's fine, but it is available online to do as well.
Well, and
it's
that's
free,
something,
actually, as you said, it's free.
Yes.
Do not pay somebody $40. I mean, people do send out letters to, they look at the D transactions and they'll send letters. Hey, this may be your homestead, here's the form, or we'll do it for you for $40 or $100, whatever it is. Never pay anybody to do it, because you can do it for free on the website.
We charge.
And then that's
nothing.
something We charge for nothing. Yes. So no, and that's something we should be reminding our clients of.
That's
And
right.
and in fact, guess what? Some people forget to do it. So as a realtor, I even suggest you going through your database every year. And I find clients that even though I remembered them I reminded them 2 or 3 times, they still didn't get it in there. So that's something we should be consistently doing to help offset some of those things because they're afforded to them. So
And if you,
no.
and let me say this, if you get a letter from us, some people occasionally get irritated. You know, lots of times we'll get homestead exemptions, for example, with 2 unrelated names on there. And the deed doesn't necessarily say they're married. So we might ask a question, you know, we send a letter back. We need proof of whatever. Another one is, hey, I get all my mail at my office. You'll get a letter from us saying your physical address doesn't match your property address. Can you explain it to us why? So, you know, if it's something that's a little out of the ordinary, we're just trying to make sure that, you know, people aren't taking advantage of the system and getting something they shouldn't. So, you know, if we ask you some questions, we're going to try to do it as easily as we can and as fast as we can. But there's sometimes we need more information to make a determination.
Well, and something else that people forget, and again, because we're in COVID times, you have to have your address updated on your driver's license, don't you, Ken?
Yes. Yeah. The state law is your driver's license has to match your physical address, your mailing address, your physical address, to get a homestead exemption. You have to show proof of your driver's license.
So realtors, make sure that you're letting your clients know that they need to get on that, even though you have till April 30th to file that homestead exemption. It's taken some time, and some people will qualify changing their address online and people don't. So I actually put that in the link to all of my homeowners this year was
Right.
Get on there, check now, or get yourself an appointment. Cause I mean, some of them are 3 and 4 months out right now. So,
yeah.
So that's kind of important.
We're taking that into consideration. We understand. We had, you know, I know it wasn't long ago, we had a 90-year-old lady who doesn't just stop driving, and, you know, she's not going to go down to the DL and get a ID card. So, and we're not cold-hearted, you know.
You're compassionate, Ken. Goodness. You know, you might have a rough exterior being from Boston, but you do have a teddy bear heart. I'm learning during the session here, and I think this makes everybody. I think it was Chuck who said, thank you for sharing this, because a lot of realtors do not know enough about property taxes, and that goes on both sides. Mm-hmm. How we arrive at the assessments, and Daniel, how we arrive at the tax rates. And that falls on us. And that's why we're doing things like this right now, to be able to have this information at the fingertips of all our realtor members. Share with your colleagues and friends around the state. This is invaluable information. Share this with homeowners to further educate them on the process. So no, I don't know about you guys, but was this relatively painless, at least?
Yes,
it was great.
Okay.
I'm a ham. I love talking in front of people. So.
Well, Ken, then I will absolutely ask you back, maybe before your busy timeline. That. Okay, and Daniel, the same with you guys, but we appreciate you taking the evening, and appreciate all of your knowledge and your continued advocacy on both sides, for homeowners and your workmanship with realtors. So from MetroTex and a Texas realtor, I appreciate both of you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Guys. Just a quick plug, knowyourtaxes.org if you want to know more information. So you can go to that website, and that's a website that Texas Realtors, has created.
And
go ahead.
And our website is DallasCAD.org is the appraisal district's website.
Right.
Perfect. So I am signing off, but with a really good message from our sponsor. That is, this week is Fantastic Moves. So Francie Bell is actually the owner of Fantastic Moves and was voted affiliate of the year for MetroTex. But Fantastic Moves is a moving company specializing in residential moves, and they've been in business since 1995, moving people locally in DFW, within Texas, and out of the state. So thank you to another longtime realtor friend and advocate, Francie Bell and Fantastic Moves, and thank you for sponsoring the show. And thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time with us this evening. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Sounds great. Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.